Sure.
So if the world's like you're the goat, but the Bible says the goats are not going to enter God's kingdom, then do you really want to be a goat?
Welcome to the Good Book Club, guys. It is, well, actually, fellow travelers, because we're actually traveling in Exodus, and we're doing number 15, chapter 15.
Just traveled through the sea.
Yes.
But now
indeed.
it's being repeated in this chapter, but it's in a song form, right?
So this is like the first Psalms.
Yes,
basically the appearance
technically,
of Psalms.
the first psalm, and it's the first song in the Bible.
Okay.
So which is pretty cool.
Would you like to sing this out loud for us?
I don't know it off by heart.
No, I'm not going to put you on the spot like that.
Great. This is basically a repetition of chapter 14 where they crossed the Red Sea, but it's done in a form of song. It starts with Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord, and his sister Miriam, she was one of the women who led them into dancing and singing the song. And there's a lot of themes that come across in this psalm or song, however you want to say it, either or, is that there's the theme of God with his right hand, which is a symbol of power. He overthrew the Pharaoh, and with his outstretched arm, he saved his people. So there's redemption and liberty is a big theme in this, let's call it a psalm, and how God used Moses as his leader for the people to be able to save them through that time of Exodus. Those are the main themes that come across in the song, and the fact that God won.
The picture I get is like with the right hand. So he has the sword, and usually the sword symbolizes the word.
Yes.
And then outstretched hand with the sword.
Oh, that's quite a
like
cool
that,
image.
Yeah. Well, I don't get the face because we don't know how God really looks, because
True.
what happened to Moses when he saw God?
That's later in Exodus,
That's
that
later.
his face shone with glory, that he had to put on a veil.
So that's like a tease for
Chapter
later.
34, something like that.
Somewhere down there. So 15 more episodes, guys. Just hang on.
So anyway, this talks a lot about how God won, and it was the battle of the gods, and of course God was always the one who was going to win, because the rest were fake.
Such a cool title.
I know, right? And
It's
it's the Lord is God, not Pharaoh, not the idol or god that looks like a frog,
the false gods or anything like that.
or any bull god, or any fake god that
the
there was.
The goat god wasn't even the goat.
The goat god wasn't the goat. In fact, now that you mention goats, right?
Yeah.
In Matthew 24:25, it talks about how God will separate those who followed him and those who didn't. The sheep are God's people, and the goats are not God's people.
Oh, wow.
So if you're the greatest of all time in the world's eyes, it doesn't really matter to God. Who God says you are matters more than what the world says.
Sure.
So if the world's like you're the goat, but the Bible says the goats are not going to enter God's kingdom, then do you really want to be a goat?
That's like unlocking another perspective.
Right?
Oh, my word.
Because I know people joke about the acronym GOAT, greatest of all time, but if you think about the Bible, we're actually portrayed as sheep,
Yeah, so
not goats.
So you don't want to be a goat.
And then the goats, they are separated, and God says, I never knew you. Do not enter my kingdom.
Wow.
And the sheep, he tells them, enter my kingdom.
It does make sense when you see a goat's head, like just the head, and it's like very devilish, because of how it's been portrayed and so on in some movies or cultures. Interesting.
That is interesting, because it makes me think of the first Sherlock or the second Sherlock movie, when he did that weird thing, and there was a goat that looked a little demonic and stuff.
Yeah.
But even Jesus himself is portrayed as a lamb. In Revelation, he has like 7 eyes, and his throat is slit.
So Jesus as the lamb, and God the Father as a shepherd.
And we're sheep.
And we're the sheep.
Yes.
Because so Jesus. Okay, no, we're going on a tangent here.
But it does link in a way, because he led them as sheep through the water.
He led them as sheep through the water, and Jesus came down to, well, that's in John. If you want to check out our previous playlist or chapters that we did. So Jesus came down to actually be among us, because he was a sheep with a sheep, and then God the Father, who is the shepherd, led them through. You can think Jesus was like the first sheep in the whole herd. Is it a herd? Is it called?
Yes, a herd. It's a herd.
A herd of sheep.
Yes, I heard of that as well. It is a herd of sheep.
So then, so he was sort of the one leading the other sheep because he was the first sheep in line.
That's exactly what Jesus did. John 10, which we did an episode about, he's the good shepherd. And it's not in John's gospel, even though he was there. John himself, who saw it, the Mount of Transfiguration, they saw Moses, Elijah, Jesus on a mountain, and they talked about Jesus's exodus. How he led us out of the slavery of sin. So then symbolically, we went through the Red Sea as well. Because he saved us, he drowned our sin, and with an outstretched army, redeemed us.
Oh wow! Okay, so this it actually links in very
well.
Very well.
I'm still surprised how well Exodus and John links.
That's why we're doing Exodus, because we saw a lot of Exodus.
Right? It's so cool
in John. So
I love it, absolutely love it. And the rest, one of the things that stand out for me, it depends on which translation. Oh, it actually says here, verse 8, by the blast of your nostrils the waters piled up, the surging waters stood up like a wall, the deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. And it's very symbolically written or poetically. And that's the thing about the Bible. You don't have just one way of writing in one book. Most of the story in Exodus written like a narrative, but then this is pure poetry.
It's really cool because the Bible also opens up for different perspectives, because it's not just one way. So it also symbolizes that there's not only just one way of doing something.
That's actually quite a good point that you're making there, because in chapter 14 it explains the split of the sea in a narrative sense.
Yes.
The very next chapter, same story, but poetically written, because it talks about the heart of the sea. There's not an actual heart in the sea, but you get the imagery, the imaginative part is being unlocked when you read the poetry.
And this was the Red Sea.
Yes, the Red Sea.
The Red Sea and the heart is red. It's like...
Oh, interesting. Ooh. So that is one of the cool things, and I like by the blast of your nostrils. Then I'm thinking, if God's nostrils poetically, I don't know if it's literal.
I just imagine whenever you're in the pool and you're just like...
And then you try to split the water.
Split the water with breathing.
But it's quite well said that God's nostrils split the sea. Or was it him... Because it was an east wind.
But it can maybe also just be how effortless it was for him.
Oh, right.
It's just by breathing from his nostrils.
Wow. That's how almighty
he didn't even have to say anything to split the sea.
What? That's actually well said. That it's so effortless for him. He's literally his nose, or poetically his nose. Just like, it's as if it's almost effortless for him just to split the sea.
Yeah.
It took the whole night, but by the blast of your nostrils makes God sound so almighty, and he is. Because later on in verse 11 it says, who among the gods, small g, is like you, Yahweh, capital Lord, in all caps Lord, who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders. It's a hypothetical, or not hypothetical, a rhetorical question. Of course we know the answer. It's the Lord himself, and he is the one who won. In fact, verse 12 says, you stretch out your right hand and the earth swallows your enemies. Literally, the waters swallowed.
Because the water is part of the earth, actually.
Exactly. And they didn't like a mouth. Obviously, I understand why.
So it wasn't quicksand.
This definitely wasn't quicksand.
It's not Dune taking place here.
No, not Dune. Dune 2 is better than Dune 1. But anyway, I may have triggered some people now. I don't know. Anyway, this is not about Dune. Let's just go on. The earth swallows your enemies. That actually explains it quite well. It's not an actual mouth, but if you think about it, if the waters tumbled down, that does have a swallowing effect.
A swallowing effect. Because also with the currents and everything, that's physics coming in as well with it, because it usually forces you down. And
yeah, very true. And it's like as if you've been swallowed.
Yes.
And that the water went inside of them and they drowned. Happened to horses as well. 600.
Poor horses.
That's actually really sad.
Wasn't it sometimes 2 horses on a carriage?
Oh, right. So it could have been 1,200 horses having drowned.
We don't know.
There's 600 chariots.
That we know.
So 2. It could have been 4 horses per chariot.
Oh, no,
like the one
just
movie.
Upping the number. You're
the
just
movie,
making it worse.
That's much worse, because the movie Exodus Gods and Kings, it portrays it as 4 horses per chariot. then it would be 2,400
How much horsepower did those chariots have?
4 each.
4 each.
That's how much horsepower they had.
Wow. Let's talk about horsepower here. God has way more upper hand with that.
There's actually a psalm that says some people trust in horses and chariots, but we trust in the Lord. Hey, that's actually very applicable to this, because they trusted in God, and they went on dry ground, and then the chariots and the horses, they drowned.
Yeah, because they were behind.
They were behind, and they didn't believe in the Lord. But if you think about it, there were some Egyptians that went with the Israelites. So some of those Egyptians that were believing in God saw their own people and their own king drown.
So that's what happens
actually
when
quite
you don't
sad.
believe. Oh wow.
Wow. That's actually...
Going from the one side to the other side, and it's like, I'm so glad I did what I did in time.
Sure. But then you're also sad for your own people, because the Egyptians saw their own people drown violently.
So then that's also the realization of the power of God, because like...
Shoo.
Wow.
And from there on, this song kind of goes into a loop, because verse 21, Miriam sang to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted, both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea," which is literally in verse 1. So you can kind of assume they might have sang it more than once. They sang it over and over again. I mean, just imagine worship of 600,000 people or 2 million.
So we have the bridge, we have the chorus. The bridge is...
This is the bridge.
Through the sea.
This is the... I'm not sure if this is the bridge, because this is how it starts. So this is the pre-chorus.
Sing to the Lord,
not
for he is highly exalted, both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea.
And then they sing it again.
Again.
So it may have been something that went on and on and on, and the women usually performed the dances. They had those round things with the
tambourines.
Tambourines, that's the words I was looking for. Yeah. If you want to watch a mockumentary style of Exodus, it's called The Promised Land, and it's on YouTube. It's really funny and it's good. Also, there's only one episode out so long, so far. So as of this recording, the 1st of January is set to be the second episode of 2025. So check it out. Anyway, from there on, what happened after they did the whole singing part? What happened there?
What did happen?
I'm asking you.
I'm asking you now.
But I'm asking you.
Hey, let me quickly read there. Okay, so then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and so they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. Oh yeah, okay, that's rejogging.
That's verse 22. So
this one is testing their faith now, because it's being very salty back there. So now they actually need to stop being salty to drink the water.
Actually, that's not bad. That's actually quite accurate, because it was bitter water.
Yeah.
And how did they...
They need to stop being bitter about it by having faith in Jesus. In God.
Yeah.
They didn't know Jesus that time.
Not yet.
God. Not yet. So what Moses had to do was actually throwing in a stick in the water.
Just a stick.
Or was it his staff?
It said a piece of wood.
A piece of wood. Okay, so it might be a toothpick.
So I think it was something more than that. Maybe like this big. I don't know.
Yeah. We don't know.
Could have been a stick.
Could have been.
But it says piece of wood, which could mean anything if you think about it.
A piece of chariot.
A what?
Piece of the chariot.
No. All the chariots drowned at the bottom of the sea, which is actually, they did a documentary. They dived and found those remains.
Yeah.
We'll link it in the description.
Well, back to this.
So,
yeah, piece of wood chucked into the water.
And then what happened?
And then it became drinkable.
Okay.
So then they weren't so bitter about it anymore.
And then they were satisfied by not being thirsty anymore.
Yeah.
And the Lord instructed them, if you listen carefully, which is Shema, Shema in Hebrew. Shema means?
To listen and obey. And we've also earlier discussed that by repeating or saying the words 2 or 3 times is putting exclamation on it.
Emphasis.
Emphasis, there we go. And so that means to like really, really doing the thing. So it's because it's one thing to listen, but to obey is by taking action.
Exactly.
So to Shema. Shema means listen carefully and take action
Yes.
certainly.
Yes, that's exactly what
Basically
it means.
that. And I also wrote because tasting the faith by putting the water in there, and it's like I don't, was it you or someone else who came up with the word with testception? So it's not a test, but it is a test in itself. So it's inception, but it's a taste in the
inspired by Christopher Nolan. Wow.
Not the testception, but the inception.
The inception. I wanted to say something about the emphasis on the words in the series The Chosen. They say shalom, which means peace, but then they greet each other in that way. So if they say shalom, shalom, they mean perfect peace that's whole and complete, because it's putting emphasis on peace.
Wow.
And you just said Shema, Shema. So in the Hebrew it would have said, if you Shema, Shema to the Lord. But if you translate listen carefully, like you said, or more accurately, it would say, if you listen carefully and obey Yahweh, your God, and do what is right, then he will not inflict any of the illnesses that the Egyptians experienced, and he is the Lord who heals them. Which is really cool, because even here he was always one who heals people. And much later, like in John, we actually, the book of John is sometimes called the book of signs. Did you know that?
The book of signs?
Yeah, signs.
Signs. Oh, sorry.
Signs. Where the sign of water into blood,
yeah.
The sign of the man standing up after 38 years of being unable to walk. It's the book of signs.
The book of signs, book of miracles.
That's exactly.
Miracles are signs.
And wonders.
Signs and wonders. Okay.
Yeah. And they went to Elim, where there were 12 springs. So I can imagine it's because there were 12 tribes. And 70 palm trees. And they camped there near the water. The number 7 means complete. So 70, I'm not exactly sure what it means. But this was the place where they camped. And that they were near the water. And the chapter ends there before we go into something that's called manna, which is chapter 16.
Chapter 16.
So we will see you there.